Indeed, indeed. In a moment, we'll take your phone calls with our guest, Steve Quayle. His website, linked up at coasttocoastam.com, is Steve Quayle, QUAYLE.com. Stephen, we check in from time to time with Douglas Hagman. Thanks to your recommendation, he's been a great source for us.
Oh, thank you.
Good guy. And, of course, he had a health scare some time ago. Seems to be doing okay.
Oh, I'm glad. I don't talk to him that much because we just are going 100 or 200 miles in the opposite direction, but I'm always glad to hear that.
Good. You ready for some calls?
Absolutely.
We'll pick it up, first of all, by going to our wild card line. And welcome to Coast. You're on the air with Steve Quayle. Hi there. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hi, George. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
You sure caught me by surprise. I didn't even get screened tonight.
No, I'm picking them up any way I need them.
All right. Well, you got me here, George. And hello, Steve. Really a pleasure and honor to speak with you. I just want to thank you, Steve, for putting your whole complete self out there over the years to try to, for our edification and our safety and survival. It takes a big man to do what you've done. Steve, I want to ask you two questions, and the first one has to do with Project Bluebeam that was mentioned early on in the program. And George had a guest, probably about 6 months ago. His name was Stuart Spurdlow. You may remember him, George?
Sure do.
And he was involved with Project Monarch, and he went over Project Bluebeam. It's the first time I'd heard of it is when Mr. Spurdlow brought it up. And he said, as well as you've mentioned, Steve, that it would be used to simulate an alien invasion. He mentioned that it was also, they plan to use it to actually counterfeit the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I was wondering, Steve, if you had heard about that and if you could go over some of the possible implications of that. I think if that information is accurate, and I have a feeling it is, that it has tremendous implications. And my other question just centers around, Steve, if you could elucidate a little bit, because I've heard you mention it on your own program, the actual idea of America being Babylon the Great in the book of Revelation and the implications of that relative to the current world scene. I think you mentioned Ezekiel, and I believe it to be in chapter 38 and chapter 39. It speaks of Iran through symbology and such, and it also speaks of the United States being the land of unwalled villages, which is attacked and basically wiped out. As George Washington saw this in his memoirs, all the way up to Dmitri Duduman saw the same vision, as well as a man who I believe you know, Steve, Henry Groover, has seen the complete nuclear destruction of this country. So God bless y'all, and thank you very much for this great show.
Well, thank you. I think I'd like to take the last question first. Is the United States Mystery Babylon? Now, first of all, if something's a mystery, it can't be that which has existed in history in the form that history declared to be, i.e., Babylon is the current nation of Iraq. It is my contention that Mystery Babylon is the United States. The reason I say that is because all of the descriptions of Mystery Babylon are certainly related to the end times, obviously the short duration of the United States as a nation as such. We are the world's financier, have been. The kings of the earth obviously sell their goods to the United States. We were the largest consumer. We basically have exported everything. There are people that teach that Iraq itself is going to be rebuilt and it's going to come into its own new prominence and everything's going to flow out of Iraq. I don't buy that. Jesus even called Jerusalem spiritual Babylon. So there seems to be a historic geographical Babylon, which is now Iraq. There seems to be a spiritual Babylon, or the mother of harlots, in the sense that obviously the Middle East at the time of Jesus' presentation as the Son of God to take away the sin of the world, they wouldn't accept that. And there is an economic Babylon, and it's fascinating because, again, there are Richard Coombs wrote a book called America the Babylon. You can Google it. It'll give you 100 reasons. But I believe that the reason it is a mystery and that the United States is Mystery Babylon is the part we play in bringing about the New World Order that brings about our destruction. And, George, you asked me a question, what I'm personally doing. I am absolutely in an attitude of getting my heart right with God. I've got attitudes that are wrong. I absolutely believe that in order to get right with God, I need to repent, which I do. And after your show and some of the emails I get, I really have to repent. But also I'm trying to tell people that no one in history laid it out better than Jesus, okay? I get a lot of flack for that. People say, I don't want your Jesus. And I said, well, if you knew him, you'd want him. And the thing is that, I would say this, I'm as familiar, if not more familiar, with ancient prophecies As you know, that's my absolute focus is antiquity
that is your forte.
And prehistory, so I don't dismiss it all. And someone says, you're just a closed-mind Christian. I'd say this. I'm one of the most open-minded guys in the world because I believe that the Bible has answers, and I can take the book of Genesis and show people how it all played out. Now, the next question, that the gentleman asked is, and forgive me because I'm answering. What was the first question?
Well, he was basically talking about with this entire episode that we are in right now with Russia and China and the squeeze that seems to be happening is, and I'm going to paraphrase it, is there a way out without conflict?
I don't believe there is. And I say that because the thing is that I just don't know, The thing that is, forgive me, from my perspective, no, I'm not trying to hedge. I believe that the conflict is what's called the end times, okay? Not the end of the world, but the end of the age. I believe the 2012 date is so critical. And I also believe that given where we're at right now in history, that obviously if Russia comes against the United States in the Middle East, and by the way, people don't understand something, but when the Russian general said that they can take out our entire fleet in 20 minutes or less, he wasn't kidding. They have...
And we could probably do the same to them.
We could, but the thing is, who does it first,
Yeah.
And we're in a position where I don't think there's any way to get around it, I don't.
It's just an ominous feeling, Stephen, a feeling that so many people have felt something strange is about to occur. We keep seeing episodes that occur, like earthquakes in China, huge ones, and things like that. And everybody thinks, well, was that what we felt? I don't think so. I think it's much bigger.
Well, I think it's really bigger. And the earth changes. There's going to be a great earthquake that's going to literally change the coastlines, change the continents, I'll tell you what's fascinating. Every time the United States gets involved, whether people like Israel, hate Israel, there's no issue on describing it. You can literally tie the way America forces its will on Israel. And by the way, you had David Flynn on your show.
Yes.
And David's book, Temple at the Center of Time, is, in my opinion, the most important thing I've ever read. I mean, I would encourage everybody because the thing is that people go, well, why is such a little piece of real estate causing so much trouble that there's so much prophecy concerning it? What happens to those that trouble themselves with that little piece of land? And that God says, if you divide my land, I'm going to divide your land. And every time we get involved in this, we have hurricanes. The last time we got involved we had massive hurricanes, i.e. Hurricane Katrina. So the earthquakes that are coming, the earth changes, whether people believe in the shift, an axial shift, the sun sickness, the sun is doing funny stuff right now. And sunspots have been gone. They've subsided.
Yep.
And the winds will literally stop. When the winds stop, and this is, you asked me why I'm getting off the radio. I'm literally been at this so long warning that the times of warnings are over, and now it's prepared. Get right with God. If you don't believe there's a God, you might make the effort to try and find out. Then who else laid it out any clearer than this? That's just you're asking, and I'm telling people prepare because they take everything for granted. They sit around primarily entertained or thinking that everything's going to remain the same. And George, just in this last year, you can see how things are escalating so quickly. So I'm telling people they better start adopting the pioneer spirit. Some people call it survival. I call it life assurance, and recognizing that, hey, listen, things are going to change so dramatically. What happens if an earthquake changes the entire subterranean water balance in the aquifers, and everybody goes to their tap, at least that are on wells or communities, municipal water supplies rupture, and guess what? The shower's no longer at the tap or the drinking water. I think that just common sense would say we should prepare for what is seemingly a world that's heading into a disaster mode.
Next up, east of the Rockies, Tim in Iowa City, Iowa. It's your turn. Hey, Tim.
Who's totally blind. I'd like to get a book on your that you've written on giants, and then the follow-up book on giants in a format I can use since I'm totally blind on compact disc or tape. I don't know how I'm going to go about that. And of course, there's the Iowa Department. There's the American Printing House for the Blind, as well as the American Council of the Blind and the National Federation of the Blind that are assisting me in this, even though I get the Braille form through the American Council of the Blind. I'd like to have access to this so I can listen to it when I want without somebody reading it to me. And another thing is, after the tribulation happens and Jesus Christ takes on over the earth, is the United States going to be resurrected under his government, as we, even if it's a different type